I am still busy preparing my planting beds and have plenty of jobs on my to-do list that I'm working my way through. But those things will have to wait as we find ourselves here yet again in February. Time for many of us to begin sowing our cut flower seeds. Mid-February finally gives us that 10 hours of daylight that we've been waiting for. Unfortunately though, February is not known for giving us much in the way of sunshine, so sometimes achieving high enough temperatures for germinations can be somewhat of a challenge to overcome. Some hardy varieties are very happy to germinate at low temperatures, and some of them prefer to grow and flower before the spring temperatures get too warm. Many of those can be sown as early as January, and for me, the types of things I would sow in January include antirrhinum, larkspur, stock and sweet peas. 2026 sees a move for me to be growing more in the way of perennials. So in actual fact, I don't have any of the varieties I just mentioned on my grow list for this season. So I don't plan to buy any seed for those varieties. However, I've been through my old packets of seed and I have gone ahead and sown any leftover seed I've got from those varieties. Waste not, want not, after all. The stock went ahead and germinated really well, so I'm pleased to say that they're growing on nicely. And now that I've decided I'm going to be growing the stock in crates, it's actually really great because I've got room for them. You know, I don't need to worry about having space for them in my planting beds. But I was so annoyed with myself. I had a really old packet of snapdragons of a variety called Canary Bird, which I haven't grown. It must be at least 3-year-olds, that packet, if not 4 years old, because I can't even really remember growing Canary Bird, but clearly I did. Anyway, I sowed it and it just started germinating. You know, all of the cells hadn't germinated yet, but quite a few of them had. And I was so clumsy and I just dropped the whole tray on the floor. Oh, you know the feeling, don't you? I mean, how I was nearly brought to tears. That's so sad, isn't it? It's only a tray of snapdragons, but there's something about once you see them emerging through that compost. Anyway, I went to the trouble. You know, a lot of people just sweep up you know, what's left on the floor and forget about it, but I picked my way through it and I found some of the tiny little ones and I tried to put them back in the tray. So we'll see if we have any of those Canary Bird snapdragons for you to see what they look like, because other than that we're not going to really have very much in the way of snapdragons because I've only got a handful in the polytunnel, but that's okay because they're not on my grow list, so we'll be fine. We'll get over it. My sweet peas I have sown, but actually I'm yet to see any sign of germination with those yet. And the larkspur, I just noticed a few sprouts this morning, but again I think we need to give those a couple more days. But actually it's great that there's any germination at all, because as I mentioned, lots of the packets of seed I've been finding are quite old, and quite honestly I don't really understand why I haven't thrown it away. But anyway, worth a try. Now it's time to really get down to business and start sowing those varieties which I have every intention of growing in the cut flower patch for my bouquets, and I actually am relying on. They're in the planting plan and we need them to germinate. One of the first seeds that I'm going to go ahead and get going is actually, it probably is my favourite cut flower. I really, you can put it in any bouquet. I think there's a colour for any bouquet, and that's the annual phlox. And I'm going to go ahead actually and I'm going to link a video in the corner. I never know which corner, one corner. I'm going to link a video which I filmed this time last year where I started my annual phlox, because, you know, I thought I don't really need to film the whole process again when I've already filmed it and done it. So if you fancy seeing how I do the phlox, check that video out. So that I've already done. So the first seeds I'm going to get started with are some of the hardy annuals on my grow list. Today we're going to be starting our lavatra. I've already started my annual phlox. I already autumn sowed my Dorcas, and I may do another sowing, but I won't do that just yet because I've already got quite a few that I did in the autumn. Nigella I've already got 2 successions of, and I will do a third, but I will sow the third direct outside. So of my grow list, do you know, I can't remember, I always thought there were 12 things on it, but it's obviously 13 or 14 things because I can think of 13 off the top of my head right now that I know are definitely on it. I'm not going to start them all today. There are a few things on there that are more half hardy annuals, so I'm not going to be starting my marigolds, I'm not going to be starting sunflowers, I'm not going to be starting my amaranthus, I'm not going to be starting my rat's tail statice or my normal statice. Is that everything I'm not starting? I probably won't start my scabious today either, but that might be the one that I may possibly start. So that leaves me, it's about half and half the things I'm not starting today and half the things I am. Definitely going to get some Greek cress started, and in fact there's lots of that is, I don't even know why I'm doing it because it's self-sown. The polytunnel is just completely full of self-sown Greek cress. So the Greek cress, the gold of pleasure, something that's not on my list but I always like to do a little bit of is Phacelia, and we'll do lavatra, we'll do helichrysum, and my annual phlox I've already done, so I might pop in some footage of that. And then that should be plenty for us to be getting on with for the meantime. Definitely not perfectly clean, but a lot cleaner than it was having been stored over the winter.
I don't generally have an awful lot of luck with my direct sowing, so this season I'm going to try and put things a little bit more in my favour by actually sowing under plastic. So the few of the seeds that I would like to sow and get growing on definitely, in my experience, prefer to be direct sown, and they definitely like growing on in cooler conditions. So I'm going to be preparing a bed outside for my Greek cress or Persian cress, and also for my gold of pleasure. And I'm also going to go ahead and sow a few seeds of Phacelia. I know they're not on my grow list, but the bees absolutely love them. And I find them a really useful addition to my early spring bouquets because they are so quick from seed to flower. I have decided just to go ahead and surface sow these seeds, and then I'm going to make sure they get a really good contact with the soil by watering them in once I've sown them. I'm not sowing them in neat lines, I'm just really almost broadcast sowing them.
So lots of growers that I know both personally or also on YouTube, they don't know me, but I follow them, recommend, various different composts for growing in. I know the bulrush compost is supposed to be quite good. I went and had a little tour of a farm in Ilfracombe, and I know that that's the compost that they use there. And then I know lots of flowers from the farm members recommend fertile fibre. Now the problems for me with those composts is buying them in bulk. I just wouldn't use, although I use quite a lot of compost for seed starting, I wouldn't use those volumes, and of course it would have gone bad by the next time that I would need to be using it. So I tend to buy things that I can buy in a domestic way, from the garden centre or small deliveries. And in the past I've used Silver Grow. And when I originally started using it, it was very good. And then there was a year where it wasn't so good, and then it was good again. I just found it not quite as consistent as I would like. And then that was also true of the B&Q peat-free multi-purpose. But I think the biggest issue I had with that was the amount of fungi that would be growing in the compost. So we're on a new compost trial yet again this season. Now I don't have the results yet, so don't take this as a recommendation, because I don't know how my plants are going to grow in it. But I've got this compost this year. This is Grow More, Better Growing, the natural way to grow, and this is black gold organic all-purpose compost, a premium organic compost producing stronger roots and more colourful blooms. I'm not really sure how, I feel as if AI might have written that. I'm not sure how the compost is going to help with the colour. But if you know a scientific reason why, do correct me. Obviously it's peat free. I won't grow with peat, and it's got worm castings in it, which I quite liked. There's a little worm on the packet, and it says now containing high potency worm castings. Let's hope it's not too rich for seed starting. Now I don't use a seed starting compost, never have, I doubt I ever will. But often I have to sieve my multi-purpose compost because they're too coarse. And especially, I suppose, more recently, a lot of the peat-free composts have a high amount of sort of wood fibre in them. And, I sieve them out, and it's quite a lot of wastage, although it's not really wastage because, of course, I use it as mulch. But this compost is not going to need sieving. This is one of the nicest consistency composts I've seen in a long time. So I mean, they call it black gold, and that looks like black gold to me. And I think any gardening people are going to be looking at that, that looks really good. Let's hope it is, but I'm feeling optimistic about this. I really think I might be onto something here. So anyway, let's get some of this tipped out so that I can work with it. It feels lovely and moist. A lot of the problem I find is with the top of the compost dries out so much. And of course, once the seedlings have got their roots established, when you're watering from underneath, it doesn't really matter if the compost dried out on top. In actual fact, it can be quite good because it can help prevent dampening off and just stop the stems rotting and things like that. But it's that initial period of time when the seedlings are just germinating. They haven't got their roots down yet, and it's so important to keep the surface of the compost moist at that point. The seeds that are covered with a layer of compost, it's not so bad. So that's usually the biggest seeds that you're growing, things like lavatra, sweet peas, sunflowers, zinnias. But those things you're going to be surface sowing, which does tend to be some of the things that I grow earlier in the season. So things like stock, helichrysum, those things, you really don't want them drying out. And of course, a good way to stop them drying out is by using a propagator lid, or I know some people use cling film, but just something to help prevent the seeds from drying out. And I'm a real fan of my mister now, just until they germinate, just giving the compost a bit of a mist. I've just been working my hands as if I'm baking a cake. So what I've been doing basically is just getting out any lumps here, but you can see it doesn't need sieving. It's a lovely consistency, lovely texture, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works. There is a lot of advice around when to start your seeds, and various factors to consider. And of course, your last frost date is one of them, because if you can plant something out before your last frost date, then you can sow those things earlier. If you can't plant them out until after that date, then you don't want to have them hanging around in pots. You'll have to keep potting them on, and possibly even several times. But of course, if you're going to be planting them out under cover, so maybe out into a polytunnel or a low tunnel, and you can offer those plants protection from things like fleece, then you are able to plant them a little bit earlier. I always find that the earlier I get things in the ground, the better they do, the better they grow on. If I get things in quite late, they tend to be smaller plants with weaker stems. So I'm always quite keen, particularly with my hardy annuals, to get on and get them sown as soon as we reach that 10 hours of sunlight in mid-February. And autumn sowing is also something I really recommend. I didn't do such a good job of my autumn sowing. The things I missed were those really important things. So scabious and helichrysum, definitely for me for autumn sowing. So anyway, we're going to sow a few hardy annuals today. I'm not going to start doing the half hardies for a little while, just because I have limited space in heated propagators under grow lights. So as soon as things germinate, they do then need to be moved to the polytunnel or the greenhouse. And it still gets extremely cold in there overnight if we have a frost, and the half hardy annuals just will not appreciate that. Although having said that, it's extremely mild here in the UK at the moment, very wet. So one of the hardy annuals I'm sowing is not on my grow list, so you'll notice I've got very small pots here for sowing, and that's because I really don't need very many of these. Is calendula, and this is collected seed. And one of the reasons I'm sowing calendula is just because it's actually really quick from seed to flower. So it's really quite useful to have it early on. And then when I've used it, you know, I don't worry that I don't have any more. So it's not something I'll succession sow, but if it seeds itself in places in the garden, then I'll make use of those plants. But this will be the only sowing of calendula I'll do, because I'm not that worried about it. It's not one of my favourites, and if this germinates, great, and if it doesn't, you know, hey. So I've already pre-watered this compost, and we're going to cover the calendula seed. And I'll prick them out, but I still don't want them too, you know, thickly sown. So I'm just gonna, they're lovely big seed for, oh, you're not going in that. They're a lovely big seed, so I can very easily just pop into the pot as many as I like, and I can pick the biggest, strongest seed as well. Generally, I would say the bigger seed will have come from flowers with bigger seed heads. That might be completely wrong, but that's what we're going to do. And because this is collected, I have no idea what it's going to be like, but there we are. So we just make sure they take a bit of contact there with the compost, and then we're going to cover them because the calendula like dark to germinate. I'm not doing any vermiculite or anything. I think it is incredibly important to keep the top surface of the compost moist, and vermiculite certainly helps do that, as do domes, which obviously you use until you see the plant and then you need to remove them. But what I love is my sprayer. So I saw this sprayer on a really popular YouTube channel, which is Grow Veg, and I saw him using it, and this is brilliant. Okay, Matabi Style 1.5, just got it on the Amazon that's taking over the world, but it's so good. It's got a really nice mist, and I just missed any trays, pots, cells that I'm waiting to germinate. I miss them every day to stop the surface of the compost drying out. And I think particularly with peat-free composts, they do dry out on the surface. And until the seed has germinated and got its root down for you to be able to bottom water trays, it's so important to keep the top of the tray moist. And the way I do that, as I say, is with my mister. And then the other hardy annual, again, it's not on my grow list. And the reason this isn't on my grow list, and you'll hear lots of other growers say exactly the same thing, is it's a bit fiddly to cut. But again, it's very useful for me in the early spring. And I do have a couple of autumn sown plants in the tunnel. But again, I won't succession sow. If some are self-seeded, as I just said with the calendula, that's great. We'll leave them where they are and we can cut from them. But they're not a plant that I'm going to be, again, if it doesn't germinate, I'm not going to be too worried. And again, we've got collected seed, which I've tipped into an old seed packet. And this is what I grew in the tunnel last year. So I collected this from the tunnel. And this is blackball. Oh, and there's actually some actual blackball seeds as well from the Happy Green shop. But we'll go ahead and use the ones we collected because they'll be fresher. In fact, I might do a few. We might do some of the Happy Green shop ones as well. And again, I don't want them too thickly because I will have to prick them out. But I still want to get quite a few in here. Okay. And again, this pot was pre-watered. Right, that'll do. Oh. And that can have a little bit of a covering. You don't need to put quite as much on as we put on the calendula. And this compost that I'm using, it doesn't need sieving. It's a brilliant texture. Some of the peat-free are quite coarse because they've got quite a lot of wood fibre in. And I would really recommend for those composts that are, very coarse, that you sieve them before you use them. And then you can use the big lumps that you sieve out just as a mulch somewhere in your garden. So you don't need to waste it. But obviously these things will need pricking out once they've germinated into their own individual cells. The Levatra, not Levatra, that's what we're doing next. That's what we're doing next. The calendula, the cornflowers and the Levatra, which we're going to do next, will not mind being pricked out. Obviously you've got things like Orlea and Nigella, which are a bit more fussy. Zinnias are another one that are a bit more fussy about being pricked out. So the Levatra, I thought I was going to bring out the collected seed for the Levatra, but I see this is actually old purchase seed. I don't know why I've done that because I did collect my own seed last year. Now, if these don't germinate, I will retry these with my own seed. Okay, there we are. And again, not not a hugely thick layer of compost, just a little bit to help it to have contact with the compost underneath. And then we'll go ahead and give these a really good mist. So the Lavatra is on my grow list, so if they do not germinate, then I will definitely be retrying them. And they are something that I'm succession sowing. I have a succession in the polytunnel. I'll sow them now, and I will sow them again probably mid to end of March, just so that I can have them flowering for a bit longer. So the compost in the pots had been thoroughly watered. This is just to moisten that top layer and also help the seeds underneath take contact. So this tray will now go on a heat mat and also under some grow lights with a cover, and I can take these pots out from under the cover as soon as they've germinated and move them on to the polytunnel or the greenhouse.
And we have had some germination, which is great news. We got germination from our helichrysum, from our Lavatra, from our stock, and also from our phlox. Not only that, I've been and had a look at some of the sowing we did outside, and I can see tiny seedlings there of the cress, of the gold of pleasure, and of the phacelia as well. And those poor snapdragons that got dropped on the floor are even trying to make it through for me as well.
Do let me know in the comments if there's anything that you are direct seeding outside, as I have with the varieties I showed you earlier. I'd be really keen to know, how many of you do that, or if you start everything in, indoors in cells and pots, or even sort of the winter sowing method in milk jugs. But yeah, who's actually sowing things directly into the ground? Excuse me. Please do let me know. And as always, thank you so much for joining me again this week. If you did like the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow my continued growing, my gardening, my cut flower journey, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like to contribute towards the making of these videos, there's a link in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.